Well, crap is about to hit the fan. Russia ready to launch a massive retaliation attack in response to what happened just a few hours ago, an assassination that was carried out on a top Russian general in Moscow. Now, this man right here is Igor Kirillov. He was just assassinated by the CIA-backed Ukrainian SBU in Moscow. Now, I'm very clear when I say that. Ukraine doesn't do anything on its own. It is all run by the CIA and NATO by proxy. That's how they carried this out. In other words, NATO just carried out an assassination inside of Moscow on a top Russian general. Let that sink in. This man, by the way, Igor, was in fact investigating the biolabs in Ukraine. Oh, now it makes sense. You know, those very same biolabs tied to Hunter Biden and Joe Biden. Convenient, isn't it? The same
that
biolabs.
Victoria Nuland admitted existed and pretend that they're just there to reverse engineer bioweapons.
Yeah.
It's only a defensive organization that's there doing biolab research, bioweapon research.
So these are the same biolabs that were carrying out COVID research in Ukraine before the COVID pandemic hit the world. Here now, by the way, is the moment. We'll show you. This is an image of the e-bike. This was planted outside of his apartment complex. So as he's coming out of his this building, not sure exactly if it's his apartment or his building, coming outside of the building in Moscow, there he is walking out. And that bike there that's on the side, highlighted in red, is the e-bike, and the handles explode because there's a bomb, an IED planted inside of that. And when this goes off, destruction. And
in a civilian area. Carelessly in a civilian area. This is not a military base, even though he's a Russian official. So no regard for whatever collateral damage or loss of life that there could have been and was, because he was with his aide at the time.
So how did this IED planted there? Apparently 300, it's a large, massive amount of TNT that was used, according to sources on this. Now, Putin's right-hand man and his attack dog, Dmitry Medvedev, just posted that this will lead to, quote, inevitable retribution against Ukraine's leadership. Russia knows the exact location, by the way, of every one of Ukraine's top leadership. Every one of them. Does that mean a decapitation attack against the top leadership in Ukraine? I saw many people wondering, is this open season on Zelensky? You just took out a top Russian general? If that's what we're doing,
right? That's what we want to do. It's a really dangerous escalation.
Yeah. So just so you understand how important this guy is, Kirillov, he has been a vocal critic of what he described as Western-led operations in Ukraine. He's been very outspoken against NATO. He accused the U.S. of orchestrating dangerous biological weapons programs in these Ukrainian labs, implicating various high-profile figures in the United States and agencies, by the way, including the Pentagon and private corporations. In August 2022, Kirillov alleged that the U.S. pharmaceutical companies backed by the Democratic Party leadership had profited from the pandemics, suggesting COVID-19 was deliberately unleashed, according to him. And of course, this all comes back to Joe and Hunter Biden. Kirillov's accusations extended to companies like Black and Viatch. Remember Black and Viatch? Which he claimed were involved in the classified research on bat viruses in Ukrainian labs, dating back to 2015. He then linked the company to Hunter Biden, EcoHealth Alliance, and even the Wuhan Institute of Virology. All of this being done in this proxy of Ukraine. By late 2023, under Kirillov's leadership, the Kremlin directly accused figures like Anthony Fauci, former U.S. health officials, and Metabiota. Remember, Metabiota, of course, was involved in the complicity of the COVID-19 pandemic. So he made these accusations based on what these research labs were doing in Ukraine. That you were funding, by the way. All of it. You were funding all of this. So he also uncovered that they were linked to Joe and Hunter Biden, Barack Obama, George Soros, and Hillary Clinton, as well as global elites in the World Economic Forum, Klaus Schwab, as well. And also the CIA. So we have confirmation of the CIA's involvement in these biolabs. So that's why NATO and the CIA had this guy killed this morning. Last night, by the way, Putin was speaking, So this happened just after, a few hours after this speech, where Putin already was warning that NATO had crossed his red line. And that means that it's open season now on NATO targets, which is exactly what the deep state warmongers want. They want full-on hot war with Russia and their proxies in Iran. So last night, Putin warned that NATO has officially crossed their red line, and this means NATO countries are now fair game for Russia to attack. Watch.
США продолжают накачивать фактически нелегитимный правящий режим в Киеве оружием и деньгами. Отправляют наемников и военных советников, и тем самым поощряют дальнейшую эскалацию конфликта. Доводят нас до красной черты, через которую мы отступать уже не можем. Начинаем отвечать, тут же пугают свое население, тогда еще в давние времена советской, сейчас российской угрозы.
I mean, that's a boring story. We've been here before. He says they continue to frighten their population with threats that were Soviet, and now it's Russia. Like, shouldn't we stop that now? It's time we stop buying that.
Yeah. I mean, this is deteriorating much more quickly. And, there's been a number of instances now where, over the past 24 hours, Putin has definitely pointed out the number of troop buildups throughout Europe of American forces and NATO forces up to their borders now. Over 100,000 troops. NATO has also now positioned long-range weapons. They've moved them closer to Russia's border. This is about to happen, guys. And why are they doing this right now before Christmas? Why before Trump gets into office? You sort of set a point of no return for President-elect Trump at this point. Because if you go into full-on war, NATO's fully involved in a hot war with Russia, and then Trump has to wait till January 20th to have any power to do anything about it. He can't do anything about it right now.
Right.
So he's sort of sitting back, watching them destroy the United States and this alliance with NATO. It's deeply disgusting. So we'll be watching that closely.
Well, Derek Chauvin's legal team will be allowed to appeal his federal sentence with access to new autopsy data on the death of George Floyd. Now, in the wake of the Daniel Penny trial, many people were saying that the Derek Chauvin trial was not fair. There is an appetite for full transparency trials that are not based on ideology since the Trump election. Wouldn't you say that's an accurate assessment of the temperature right now?
Right. And there's absolutely, I think most Americans are aware that so much was swept under the rug with this story. Mm-hmm. And now what? Like, he's behind bars for another 2 decades. Right. He has to sit there. Well, can justice be served?
Nobody wants someone who didn't get a fair trial because of politics. Media frenzy and politics. Right. Absolutely. That's right. And so now Derek Chauvin is the police officer who held George Floyd to the ground in May of 2020. Floyd would later go on to die after the altercation. And the major question is whether George Floyd died from this event or after this event. The media presented it to us as a textbook case of police brutality, white on black crime. But Candace Owens' documentary on this was actually mind-blowing to me because I bought that narrative. Absolutely. I watched her documentary, and I want to suggest that you look into it too, called The Greatest Lie Ever Sold. This was when she was still at the Daily Wire. She presents some upsetting facts that were buried, such as the fact that Floyd's drug dealer had been allowed to plead the Fifth Amendment in order to not testify, possibly because he'd given Floyd enough narcotics to kill an animal. Also, she exposes the corruption of the Black Lives Matter movement, which fundraised millions, but never bothered to pay off any of Floyd's debt, left his roommates to deal with his personal belongings, including like get a truck towed and things like that. They didn't even bother to give them a little bit of what was fundraised in the name of George Floyd. Now, Chauvin, though, let's get back to him, has asked for an appeal because he says his defense team was terrible. His lawyers had a medical opinion of a doctor who said that the kneeling did not cause the death of George Floyd. Owens goes on to say this too in her documentary. He said they show that he knelt on the shoulder and not anywhere that would cause and impede breathing. We're not doctors, so that's not for us to say definitively. It is for us to hear testimony of doctors who have a different opinion, such as one named Dr. William Schnatzel. I think I'm saying that right. He actually had contacted the Chauvin defense team, and Chauvin's team never used this doctor's thesis or evidence. Why didn't they do that? do you wonder? Is it because so many people connected to his defense were getting death threats and they were afraid? Possible, right? So now his new defense has asked a judge to test his theories, Dr. Schnatzel, against Floyd's bodily fluids and samples or slides of his heart tissue. And a judge has ruled that they can do that. They can do it. Here's the judge's order, in case you want to look it up for yourself. Now, a lot is being made in this order of this sentence here. Do you see what it says? It says that the autopsy report also shows that antemortem blood was collected on May 25th. Antemortem blood means samples taken before someone died, meaning when he showed up at the hospital, he was alive for blood samples to be taken. So there must be documentation if he died in the care of the hospital. There must be more there, right? So Clayton and I were discussing today, did we know this, that he was alive when he showed up at the hospital?
Sure.
I think some people did and maybe some people didn't, because this is causing a lot of stir online right now.
It's certainly gotten buried, right? The mainstream media doesn't want you to know that he was still alive at the hospital.
And very amped up on drugs.
Yes.
With a lot of drugs in his system. So that's what they're be trying to prove. They say that the death could have been caused by the fentanyl and methamphetamine, among other drugs that were present in his blood, in addition to a high level of catecholamines and a neurohormone important in a stress response. Also, they're saying he had this pre-existing myocarditis and an acute stress-induced heart condition. So they will have a chance to look at that in the appeal, which leaves us with a lot of questions as a society that we need to tackle without getting so amped up on our emotions. So will the public accept an overturning of the case if that does happen? Would it affect the other two officers who were also imprisoned along with Derek Chauvin? Chauvin, by the way, was stabbed 22 times last year in prison, and he survived it. So that's worth noting. Also, what would if there were a Black Lives Matter riot in the wake of overturning this case, what would Donald Trump do? He allowed the BLM riots to rage out of control in 2020. People got hurt. Small businesses were looted. Would second Trump administration allow that kind of stuff to happen? What do you think?
Well, I mean, and I don't know too deeply here about what Trump's orders were with the National Guard as it related to Portland, Oregon, and other places like that. But he certainly tried to, from what I understand, tried to quell the violence. And he was shot down.
He was hamstrung.
Yeah. And
so
not able to do that.
Would he maybe say, I'm not going to let that happen this time. I'm taking authority that's under the presidency. He's not, he was running again in the summer of 2020. So, And then would Chauvin then still be charged with unnecessary force? If he did not, in fact, cause Floyd's death, would he receive some sort of lesser charge? Is there merit there? So those are things we have to think about rationally. I think we all can admit we did not think rationally in the wake of George Floyd's death. So there you go. Buckle up.
Yeah. Someone in the chat says, Cam says, it wasn't federal jurisdiction for him to have done that. Would have been state. Right. And so. Yeah,
but there were riots all over the country. Sure. Some were more violent than others.
And you just go to Portland. I mean, just drive down the streets of Portland. You can still see boarded up buildings that are all throughout that whole area as a result of the Black Lives Matter protests that destroyed those businesses. They never came back. You can still see the boarded up buildings throughout. Go ahead, Philip.
The siege essentially in Portland was at the federal building. So it was. The police were definitely involved, but it was the federal building is where the most of the conflict was happening.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, I definitely want to see trials happen absent of ideology. And so if we need to take a look at this, we do. Over the weekend, I just want to put this as an aside. I read the Book of Matt about the Matthew Shepard death. I absolutely would like to see Russell Henderson retried for the death of Matthew Shepard, because that is a tragedy beyond. And it was, he was convicted based on ideology as well. That was not a homophobic death. Had nothing to do with homophobia. In fact, the person who killed Matthew Shepard had a sexual relationship with him. So we were sold a lie on that. I've invited the author of that book on. That is something that absolutely should be relooked at. And a judge just denied his appeal in September. I want to talk about that more. How we were sold gay rights based on this lie of a story, but that's not what we're going to do today. So we'll talk about that more later.
We're going to talk about the big picture because I think, you look at the mainstream media, they're really totally ignoring the big story here on what's going on with these UFOs and the drones across the United States. If you're watching legacy media, they're just focused on airspace and, and all of that. We're going to take a look at the big picture here so you understand more deeply what's going on with all of this. Listen up, guys. If you're suffering from daily aches and pains, please listen closely. Top medical experts have unveiled a natural pain reliever that's changing the way Americans fight pain. It's 100% drug-free Canolidine. Now, I've heard from many of our viewers that have tried Canolidine and they've thanked us because it has changed their life. I've seen the emails. Canolidine is the only solution in the world that optimizes your body's natural painkillers called endorphins, providing full body relief without dangerous pills or known side effects. Again, 100% drug-free. Over 1 million Americans and hundreds of professional athletes, including UFC fighters, have already embraced Canolidine's pain relief power. Best of all, Canolidine is legal worldwide, certified drug-free, and does not cause side effects, grogginess, or any kind of addiction. After 14 years of clinical research, it's been proven safe and effective, backed by thousands of successful use cases from other Americans just like you. So I want you to try it right now for less than $1 per day. This is your opportunity to finally live pain-free. So click the link below to try the only Canolidine product in the world, risk-free for a full 90 days. Here's the URL. It's trycano.com/redacted. Try it now. Head to trycano.com/redacted to try the only Canolidine product in the world, risk-free for a full 90 days. Well, the UFO drone attack is a massive false flag operation designed to take away your liberties. We've been warning for months that this was coming. I spoke to an inside source today that said these drones are 100% man-made. 100% man-made using advanced aerospace technologies, of course, that we're not privy to at the moment. So these are not aliens. These are 100% man-made technologies. That's all part of an operation. You want to call it Project Bluebeam. You can call it whatever you want. It's all part of an operation to put us into a panic mode and force new restrictions on civil liberties. First to panic us, then have the U.S. military interact with these, be shot down, have craft be attacked, and then new restrictions on civil liberties in the United States. Last night, NASA, for instance, cut short a live feed when an orb or a craft entered the shot, and then they turned off the feed from space. Watch this. So you can see here on the top part of your screen, watch as this craft comes into the shot. There it is. Similar looking orbs, almost the exact same thing that we've been seeing all over the United States. This comes into the shot, and then just a few seconds later, about 20 seconds later, NASA cuts the feed off and stops live streaming. Stops live streaming this from the International Space Station. So again, these things are happening all over the place right now. Passengers on board this flight from Chicago to Newark spotted 3 of these exact same orbs right out the window, hovering right off. I mean, you imagine if you're flying, not 3 of them, sorry, like 4 of them, 5 of them, 6 of them, all right there, just like tracking and following the plane. Wouldn't you crap your pants? Like, now that's being seen everywhere. I had my best friend, Andy, I spoke to him last night in Reading, Pennsylvania. His wife, on her way home from work, captured 3 of them on camera. Like, this is happening all over the place and so commonplace now. So the next step will be to shoot these things down. Now, I spoke last year, 1 year ago, I spoke to the man who worked at the FBI, who was in charge of their X-Files program. They didn't call it the X-Files, but it was the inspiration for what would become the X-Files and Fox Mulder. He's basically like Fox Mulder. That's John D'Souza, who worked at the FBI. 1 year ago on this show, he told me that a fake alien invasion is the next step. This is what they're going to do. And it's at the time, like, you should read the comments. People are like, are you crazy? Fake alien invasion. We're going to see lots of craft all over the United States. Really? That's about to happen? Yeah. Now it's here. So how crazy does that sound? But he laid out, in fact, he's been talking about this for a long time. And he said what's going to happen is that they are going to start interacting with military craft. That's the next step. Military craft interacting with these. And then you're going to have military craft getting shot down. This is all part of the plan. So listen to what he had to say about this. This is just a snippet. I encourage you to watch the full interview, but here's just a snippet. What do they want in this situation where they would want to start taking down aircraft? What do you know from your experience in the FBI that they act this deep state? What do they want?
The end goal is, and this is a long-term psychological operation, as well as physical operation as well. The long-term goal is ultimately to put together this grand operation called fake alien invasion. Now, the only fake part about it is going to be that the alien visitors are involved with this. They're not at all. Everything else is going to be real. The destruction that they bring to our cities is going to be real.
So
what?
That was a year ago.
That's wild.
That was a year ago.
I do remember that.
I mean, John, of course, has been vilified by, they go after him because he's an FBI whistleblower. I mean, he left the FBI and he's been basically, educating all of us about this. But anyway, that's just a small piece of it. And
it's wild, though.
He's not the only one. So he's one of many people and sources that we've spoken to here over the past year who said that this was coming. And they gave us specific dates when they told us it was coming. And they hit those dates. So now it's here. But this is the most mind-blowing thing of all. A post on 4chan in 2022. Okay, now this has been removed. This has been covered up and censored multiple times. I'm going to read to you from this, okay? So this is, again, from 2022. The next false flag will be centered on the premise of malicious interdiction of nuclear source materials. It will not involve a nuclear device or nuclear detonation, but rather a radiological threat. Nuclear source materials will be deliberately leaked to target areas to inflict severe injuries through radiation exposure. The real number of casualties as a result of these attacks will remain very low. The purpose is to create a new method of restricting freedom of movement and new policies that will enable the government to continue its expansion of power. The media will display images of attack survivors who will have burns and lesions across their skin. Videos depicting overwhelming triage centers with victims vomiting or other unresponsive symptoms will be shared on social media. The threat of radiation exposure, an invisible enemy, will be used as the primary vector. Basically saying an application modeled after the COVID contact tracing will be installed on every mobile device that uses iOS or Android. The application will have to notify the user about potential hazardous exposures and recommend actions that they take should include voluntary exposure testing. Additionally, the cellular carriers will roll out automated SMS alerts that will have similar functionality. This application will interface directly with the UICC mobile dialing service. If the user does not have this application installed, network connectivity will be prohibited. And it goes on and on from there.
You need to shut the front door.
So
this is
from
crazy
2022. And then over the past few days, the threat of radiation exposure, because they can't find the damn radioactive devices that wound up in the port of Newark and in a cargo container that are empty. Radiological devices that are empty and missing now. And of course, many people, drone experts, have said that in fact they're looking for something radiological right now. That the only reason these orbs, whatever they are up at night, these man-made craft, are as a result of a radiological exposure. Take it with a grain of salt, I guess. You could throw it out the window if you want to. Why are we seeing this all now? The timing of it is absolutely perfect. 30 days before President Trump takes office. What is the purpose of it? Again, you can consult that 4chan post from 2022. It doesn't, it's up to you how you want to look at it. All of this was, though, foretold years ago, before even the 4chan post, by the way, by Billy Meyer. Many of you who are awakened enough know about the Billy Meyer case. If you're not awakened yet, you'll dig into it. You'll understand once you start diving into it. In fact, as you know, this singular authentic UFO case, 82 years old, is ignored by the media. censored, suppressed, and attacked by so-called UFO experts, as my friend Michael Horn likes to say. It's the Billy Meyer UFO contact case, he's laid all of this out in text form. It's been copyrighted material decades before it's actually happening right now. I know, sounds crazy, but you can go read about it. Read about it on theyflyblog.com. That's where you can see it. Michael Horn does a great job of cataloging all of this there. In fact, they just posted this a few days ago. These drones are not from the Plejaren. These are human craft, posted on December 15th. Go read it for yourself, and you can look at the drone video sources, and you can also see how this was predicted decades ago, what we're currently seeing right now, this man-made, quote-unquote, fake alien invasion. Again, has nothing to do with aliens, has nothing to do with it, but it's all part of a larger plan right now. And you're starting to see all of these pieces coming together here. So what do you guys think about that? Anything?
I buy it.
Anybody?
The radioactive thing is interesting because like the medical devices. Are you familiar with I'm probably going to mispronounce it, but like the Guyana catastrophe? I think it was in the 80s where somebody had like salvaged a medical, like a radiological medical equipment. And it ended up like contaminating an entire town where a bunch of people, like it was just like a major nuclear catastrophe because people just kept spreading it around not knowing what this radioactive material was. Like it doesn't take a lot to accomplish a lot as far as that's concerned. I feel like
a small amount of it.
You can look it up.
Yeah, no, a small amount of it, right? That's the major concern about this missing radiological material that was on the freaking cargo container that's now missing in New Jersey. And then you could, add that to the 2022 4chan posts and then all of these other predictions from insiders who've been nailing these dates, specifically what was about to happen, all in an effort to lock us down, take away our civil liberties, get rid of any recreational drones and use just commercial drones from now on. I know Alex Jones has been talking about that piece of it, which is the plan to basically get rid of all the residential drones and be able to implement that plan on that side of it. So you want to call it Project Bluebeam. I think we're pulling all these pieces together right now. But I think the good news is that we're not falling for it. Like by talking about it and getting this message out there about it, hopefully people are awake enough to know that this is all part of a plan. But Donald Trump called it out yesterday. He said they know exactly where these are from. Trump called them out. He said the Pentagon knows exactly where these are from, and they're not being honest with the American people right now. They didn't like that. So anyway, we'll be continuing on the story because it's absolutely fascinating and terrifying. Do you ever have a feeling you're being surveilled and hesitate to share things of interest via text message or email with your friends and loved ones? Well, recently, outspoken parents at a PTA meeting in Catholic Americans have been labeled as domestic terrorists by the FBI. These types of labels can be used to allow the U.S. government to surveil its own citizens and others who live abroad without any legal due process. Fortunately, the founders of Bunker have created an app to uphold people's rights. Bunker is not beholden to any third-party corporation, investor, or government. Bunker deeply believes that privacy is a human right and that everyone on Earth deserves bank-level security. Bunker provides you protection from state and corporate surveillance, as well as cyber criminals. It includes a completely secure and private messenger, a robust password manager, secure cloud storage, and files for your documents. Bunker is built to uphold the rights of people and protect them from cyber crimes. Download Bunker from the App Store or the Google Play Store today. Use the offer code REDACTED to receive your first year for free.
Well, New York City Mayor Eric Adams has woken up to the Marxist regime of the left, and he's talking about it. He said this about the United Health CEO killing. He said this is a result of radicalization from the left. Now, he doesn't say left, but that's what I'm hearing. Listen to what he says and see who you think is to blame for this.
Think about the shooter. Ivy League, grew up in an affluent household. His manifesto clearly is showing some signs of hating. Our children are being radicalized. I said this over and over again. And everybody's like, what are you talking about, Eric? Our children are being radicalized to hate the America, to hate the country that put them where they are. This person had all that one wants to have, but he hated everything to the point of shooting someone. And we better deal with the radicalization of our young people. And, people could, they could complain that I'm saying it, but I'm seeing it. I'm seeing our bench is hating the team. And we better start acknowledging and focusing on that. And so having dance parties celebrating the death of someone, I don't support that.
Yeah,
Wow.
I'm not for that either. It's surprising.
Yeah.
And refreshing to hear him say that. He's discussing quite literally a page out of Maoist China's playbook. Mao called this class conflict theory. He declared everyone who was privileged the enemy. This came from his 1926 paper, Analysis of the Classes in Chinese Society, where he classified people as landlord class, middle bourgeoisie, petty bourgeoisie, semi-proletariat, and proletariat, and concluded that the landlord class, including the right-wing middle bourgeoisie, were the enemies of the revolution, and he deputized anyone to either turn them in, work against them. He basically said exactly what this man seemed to feel. Anyone privileged, anyone for the working class, anyone in corporate America, bad. We need to go against them. We still preach this in America, only we do it through critical race theory. Now, economist Carol Roth says, when you go into Target and you see T-shirts that say down with the patriarchy or capitalism bad or what have you, they put it on wine glasses for middle-class moms, right? It's a misunderstanding of how you are currently benefiting from capitalism. What you're really upset about is crony capitalism or bad central planning. It's not really the forces of an economy built on capitalism. But who's bothering to study these distinctions when you could just deputize or radicalize an entire population? That gives the government power in the end, doesn't it? So they're just radicalized against power, really, full stop. So they think that everyone's getting screwed and it just needs to be torn down. So I don't know, those people who just want to tear down an entire society and start over, go to Syria. That's happening there. You could try there, right? You don't have to kill people in America if you want to start over. So try that out. What do you think of that?
There's no capitalism there. Yeah. Well, guess what? Let's go to Aurora, Colorado now, because there are migrant gangs in Aurora, Colorado. They made fun of President Trump for it when he called them out. And police have now arrested 14 people in apartment complexes. And these gang members were found with hostages. They were bound. Yes, their hands were tied up and they were stabbed. In America, this is happening. Migrant gangs. This is the same Tren de Aragua gang that was the topic of the presidential campaign. So this story, we were told, is no big deal. Of course, during the election, it seems to now be a really, really big deal. Certainly to the people who live in Aurora, Colorado. Watch.
Okay, Aurora, Colorado now. This is a live look now. The sun is up there in that state, and police have now detained 14 people and reported armed home invasion. That's the same apartment complex where a lot of people were complaining about the armed Venezuelan gang members roaming the halls. Reports indicate that investigators said that several suspects entered the apartment and had two people inside. The suspects then reportedly moved the victims to another apartment complex, or rather another unit on the property where police said they were found threatened and bound. An adult man sustained a non-life-threatening stab wound. At the moment, police say it's unclear if the suspects are connected to the Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua, but we'll get a live report in Colorado 30 minutes away and bring you the latest on that developing story.
So how did they find these guys? Well, according to local reports, they were just out for some good old kidnapping. They started their day. They're like, hey, what are you doing today? You want to go do some more kidnapping?
Let's go jump somebody.
Yeah, want to go jump somebody? That's what they did. So they went out, and that's when things went wrong. They were basically went out and they got caught for doing this. This is the same apartment complex that President-elect Trump spoke of on the campaign trail. The media tried to downplay it.
Well, look what this says. It says a male and female victim were accosted by 13 to 15 armed individuals. 8 in the morning, you're walking the dog or going to work or whatever, a male and a female. You're jumped by more than a dozen dudes, gang members. And he said all 13 were male, possibly 3 suspects were female. So again, what the media wanted us to take from this over the summer, when we knew that these apartment complexes were overrun by gangs, the media wanted us to think, yeah, it's happening, but we want the same leadership. It's good. It's fine.
Well,
right?
also the media wanted to cover it up, and they wanted to say this is not a big deal at all. And again, President Trump spoke about it on the campaign trail, and then the media, of course, tried to downplay it and say that this wasn't happening. It wasn't happening in Washington, D.C. or New York City or something like that, and people don't care about the working people. Remember this exchange with ABC News and Martha Raddatz and J.D. Vance? This is an unbelievable moment.
But I'm going to stop you. The incidents were limited to a handful of apartment complexes, and the mayor said our dedicated police officers have acted on those concerns. A handful of problems.
Only, Martha, do you hear yourself? Only a handful of apartment complexes in America were taken over by Venezuelan gangs, and Donald Trump is the problem and not Kamala Harris's open border. Americans are so fed up with what's going on, and they have every right to be. And I really find this exchange, Martha, sort of interesting because you seem to be more focused with nitpicking everything that Donald Trump has said rather than acknowledging that apartment complexes in the United States of America are being taken over by violent gangs. I worry so much more about that problem than anything else here. We've got to get American communities in a safe space again. And unfortunately, when you let people in by the millions, most of whom are unvetted, most of whom you don't know who they really are, you're going to have problems like this. Kamala Harris, 94 executive orders that undid Donald Trump's successful border policies. We knew this stuff would happen. They bragged about opening the border, and now we have the consequences, and we're living with it. We can do so much better, but frankly, we're not going to do better, Martha, unless Donald Trump calls this stuff out. I'm glad that he did.
Okay, let's just end that with they did not invade or take over the city, as Donald Trump said. I want to move on to
just a few apartment complexes, no big deal.
A few apartment complexes that the mayor did not seem was invading the entire.
She really told him.
Yeah, I mean, like that the guy that was stabbed, it wasn't like he was fatally stabbed. I mean, come on, it's just
a little bit stabbed.
Just a little stabbing going on. They're all tied up and kidnapped and stabbed by Venezuelan gangs in Colorado, which is just totally normal. It's just totally fine.
Yeah.
Leave your doors open at night. Open your doors. Let these Venezuelan gangs walk right into your liberal neighborhoods if you're okay with that.